Welcome back, sports gamers. It's the Natural here with my main man, Forverts, to break down every single team in the game that gets you started with the best franchise team in Madden 22. We're going to go through the analytics of every single team from cap to the draft, the quarterback, weapons, D-line, run D, coverage, everything. Let's talk a little bit about, tell me a little bit how this formula works that you came up with.
So this is a formula I've been working on for 3 years. I've been putting this out here since Madden 19, Madden 20, somewhere around in there. There's 11 data points here. And so I'll explain these data points. This data is all pulled straight from the game, right? So this doesn't have any of my bias in there. It doesn't have any of my own personal input. It's strictly the data that comes out of the game. So data points here, the 11 data points are the cap, right? So we look at the cap specifically as it relates to the second season of franchise, because that's the season that all the re-signings come from. So that's the most important cap for somebody starting out a new franchise. Look at draft capital. So we're looking at draft picks for this coming draft and the following draft. Where does that guy rank in terms of picks available to them? Look at what I call the Youth Power Index. Now, the Youth Power Index is a cumulative score I've created for the top 51 guys on the roster. It looks at the age of the players and their overall ratings to give you a score that basically says this is a really good young team or this is a really old bad team. Then we go to the adjusted quarterback ranking. The adjusted quarterback ranking is a ranking of all quarterbacks that will be starting here in Madden 22 and then adjusted for age. So basically we'll look at the best quarterbacks to play for the entire cycle. You may have a good old quarterback, but he's not going to be there for the whole cycle. Then some of the more things that people are probably used to, we evaluate the weapons. We evaluate the offensive line, both pass blocking, run blocking. We look at run D, coverage scores. And then we look at what I call the optimal rush rating. It's a proprietary rating on the best rush moves based on the rush package you'd be looking at. And then we cap it off with athleticism on the offensive and defensive side. So a lot of data we aggregate together for you guys, and that's where these rankings come from. So don't come at me on Twitter to tell me that I'm crazy.
Yeah, every box is checked there and every rock overturned to kind of line up these teams for you guys, these ratings. So we're started at number 32. You want to get right into it with the Detroit Lions. No surprise here.
Detroit Lions. Now, what's going to be interesting, you're going to see here in this first rung is there's tiers. So you'll see a couple guys that have a score that's very close. The Lions come in here at a 78.2. The next one's a 78.6. So you'll see there's not a lot of change, but the Lions, not great across the board, right? Their weapons 31st in the league, their coverage 31st in the league, athleticism 30th in the league, 28th offensive athleticism. They don't have a rating in the top half other than the draft capital. They do have the number one draft capital in the league. Now, what I'll say about the Lions is if you're a guy that says, hey, I want to do like an online YouTube franchise where I rebuild the franchise, the Lions may be a great one for that because they have the most draft capital of any team in this game. So if you're really looking for a good kind of compelling story to do that, the Lions are your pick. Otherwise, they're not going to do a whole lot for you out the gate.
Yeah, unfortunately, it won't be Cookie Boy because he already did that last year for Madden 20. But someone else out there, this would be a great team. If you're a good drafter, you're going to build your team from the ground up, Lions are a great choice. All right, moving right on to the second worst team, the Atlanta Falcons at 31.
I just mentioned 78.6 here, so only a 0.4 difference. So they're not much better than the Lions, but they're in that same tier. When you look here at the Falcons, again, they're 6th in draft capital, so they've got a decent amount. Now, they don't have the extra first like the Lions, but they do have some mid-round picks there. The other good point here for the Falcons, they're 10th in offensive athleticism as well as 14th in defensive athleticism. That's basically where all the good stuff ends. 31st in run D, 27th in coverage, 29th rated offensive line, 28th in the Youth Power Index. So they are a very old team. This is not a team that's going to have a lot of upside to build on. You've got a couple guys that Matt Ryan, he's got a really bad contract there. They are 28th in cap. So that's going to be a struggle here. But, I think there's enough Atlanta Falcon fans out there that you should be able to fill that in your franchise.
Yeah, I think Kyle Pitts is pretty much that whole entire offensive athleticism rating there by himself.
Pretty much.
All right, moving right along to number 30, which is a little surprised. I thought, the Jags is kind of an upside a team here that have some promising youth and all that, but the Jaguars coming in at 30.
Now, this is another team. We talk about the tiers. This next tier of 3 teams are separated by 0.7 points. So, they're interchangeable, the next 3. Jacksonville just happens to check in here at number 30. They're 11th in cap, right? So you've got some room to grow. They're 9th in draft capital. So it's a good rebuilding team, right? They're not a great team right now, but they could be a great team in the future. They are 7th in adjusted quarterback rating. Trevor Lawrence there has a lot of upside that you'll be looking to use in the future. They are 12th also in offensive line. So there's some good pieces there to build around. Let's talk about what's not so good there. Defensive athleticism, they come in at 31st. So they're not got a lot going on there. Remember, my athleticism score isn't just speed. It's an aggregate score of speed, agility, change of direction, acceleration. So there's some things going on there that aren't great. 29th in run D, 28th in optimal rush, 26th in coverage. So the defense needs a ton of work. But if you want to hang your hat on something, hang it on Trevor Lawrence, hang it on the cap you have, and hang it on that draft capital.
Yeah, another builder block team there if you're a good GM for sure. And number 29, team that I'm hoping to get in my upcoming franchise here, the Bears.
So here's the problem with the Bears. 30th in draft capital, right? They just traded a bunch away for Justin Fields. So you don't have a lot to build around, but you do have Fields. So that's something. Fields does give you the 15th rate adjusted quarterback rating. So you have a little bit to work there. The problem is 29th in youth power index. They're a very old team. And when I say that, I'm not saying like the whole roster is old. What I'm saying is their best players are pretty old relative to the rest of the league. But the good side of that is they're 4th in optimal rush. They can get after the quarterback. They're 2nd in run D, and they're 19th in coverage. So their defense has got some juice behind them, but weapons not so great. You're talking 26 in weapons, 26 in offensive athleticism, 25th in O-line. So offense needs a ton of work. You got some building blocks there in Allen Robinson, but he is on the last year's deal there. You've got Darnell Mooney, very good wide receiver there. But, that's a team that it's going to struggle a little bit, I think, here. And if you can't get young quick, that team could pass you by very quickly.
I'm really surprised to see the offensive athleticism for the Bears because they might not got great overall guys, but I feel like they have a couple of speedy wide receivers like in the 3rd and 4th slots there.
So here's how that works. We went with the first 2 wide receivers, and then we went with the flex, on athleticism, we actually did go 3 wide receivers deep. Where we got in trouble here with the Bears, it looks like, is their halfback, not the most athletic guy in the world. He's solid, but he's not super athletic. And then, Allen Robinson, as good as he is not like an ultra athletic guy.
He's slow.
And then tight end obviously is just not great there in general. So
that makes sense.
So they got brought down. They do have they've got a couple good players there that you can bring that athleticism up with, but I think your core is pretty average.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. All right, moving right along. Talk about a team that can go from average to the bottom of this list, depending on what happens to the quarterback situation. We have the Houston Texans here at 28.
Checking in at 28, they scored an 80.8. So again, 0.7 from the Jaguars, 2 spots below. So they're all relatively similar, interchangeable. The Texans here, you're talking 22nd in cap, 17th in draft capital. So they're pretty much middle of the road in those aspects. 16th in youth power index. Now they are 3rd in adjusted quarterback. That is, again, like the natural said there. That is the shining beacon you're trying to hang your hat on. So hopefully nothing happens there. The other positive you have is actually a really athletic defense, 6th in defensive athleticism. Let's talk about the bad. 31st in optimal rush. They cannot get to the passer. 32nd in run D. They can't stop the run. 29th in weapons. They're not very good in the weapons department. So if I'm looking at the Texans, I'm really just hoping Deshaun Watson's my quarterback, because if he's not, this team probably does fall all the way down to the worst team in franchise.
Yeah, for sure. They would definitely take if that's the case. All right, moving right along to 27. A team that looks like they're on the rise on your list and in the league, the Cincinnati Bengals.
The Cincinnati Bengals are an interesting one, I think, here at 27. Now, they do start the next tier, right? So they're, I think, like an 81.5. They're separated by about 0.3 points between the top and bottom of this tier. So, again, you could interchange them out. But when I'm looking at the Bengals, I see 8th in cap, 11th in draft, right? So they've got some ways to build this team. They're 4th in the youth power index, so they are a very young team. So a good rebuild option here. Joe Burrow only checking in at 16. I know a lot of people will say, how's he only the 16th best quarterback? The reality is Joe Burrow turns 25 year one in your franchise. So he's already pretty old for a quarterback, even though he's only a second-year quarterback. So that does impact your ability to progress him here in Madden. Now let's talk about the bad. 27th in weapons. Now I know what you're saying right now. You're saying, well, wait, everybody tells me they're wide receivers and Joe Mixon and everything's so good. Understand it. They have a horrible tight end situation. Jamar Chase can be really good, but he's not great right now. And then that third wide receiver option, right? T. Higgins, not a great Madden guy, pretty slow, ratings not that great. So, from Madden's standpoint, the weapons are still a little bit of a problem. Then you get into some things like, offensive athleticism, 29th, offensive line, 27th, on the defensive side, 26th in rush, 28th in run D. But the one good side on the D is their 7th in coverage. So when I look at the Bengals, I say, hey, this is a great team if you want to do a complete rebuild. It's going to take you a couple seasons, but you could probably take this team and make them a contender.
Yeah, for sure. Quality coach and GM definitely could take this team. There's some good pieces. There's some issues, but definitely some good pieces to build upon. Moving right on to my personal shocker on the list, and probably the team you're going to get the most flack from this video, the Colts. Indianapolis Colts at 26.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and shout out my boy J-Rod. Big Colts fan. He's going to hate me for this one. But guys, again, this is the data. It's not me talking. It's just the data. So let's look at what the data tells us. They're 5th in cap. That's a good thing. 26th in draft capital. Not a great thing. Remember, they are trading away. I used the 2nd round in this projection for Carson Wentz, so I didn't even go the highest. But I did go with that 2nd rounder, but they're missing a couple other mid to late round picks. So 26 in draft capital, 3rd in youth power index. So very much like the Bengals, you can build this team. They've got a good young base to build around. But then we get into some other issues. 30th in adjusted quarterback rating. Carson Wentz not very good in the game, not very young either, which makes for a little bit of a problem there. You get into the weapons, 24th, right? They're not horrible, but they're not great. You do have some, good players. Jonathan Taylor, T.Y. Hilton's a little older, not that great. And some of their secondary options, not what I would call elite. Offensive athleticism, that shows 30th, but then, offensive line 6. So you can at least protect whatever quarterback you stick back there. On defense, they do have some upside, 12th in run D, 16th in coverage, but 27th in defensive athleticism. So the Colts are a team that I think a lot of people are going to just say, screw this guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm going to take him, which, hey, that's fine. I'm just telling you what the data says, but I will tell you there are some major issues here with this team that you shouldn't overlook if you're going to take them in your franchise.
Yeah, like you said, the stats show. The numbers don't lie. You can see. I think that quarterback situation really is a tough one, as far as the athleticism on the offense really hurts them. All right, moving right along to the Raiders at 25, a team that I feel like is always in this position that's gifted but struggling on the field.
Right. Yeah, the Raiders are not a horrible option, and there's some places where I'd have concern, but there's a lot of room to grow here. So let's talk about them. We're 9th in cap here, so they are a top 10 cap availability team. They're 10th in draft capital. They're 9th in youth power index, so they've got that going for them. 9th in weapons, 8th in offensive athleticism. So right there, you've already set up a really good core. Now, what I'll say is your adjusted quarterback rating only at 19. Carr is not, a great long-term option, but he could be worse. He could be Carson Wentz. Where you really get into trouble is the defensive side of the ball. They are the worst defense on paper in Madden. And what I mean by that, you're 31st in optimal rush rating. They can't get after the quarterback. 30th in run D. They can't stop the run. 32nd in defensive athleticism. So you don't even have like dumb bad guys running back out there. You've got dumb bad slow guys running around back there. And then 21st in coverage. Right. Like you've got nothing going for you on that defense. So that defense is a total rebuild. But if you say, hey, I don't care about defense, I'm going to win shootouts, Raiders could be a great option for you. Just know that you have to do something on that defense. Maybe it's get some coverage. Maybe it's get some pass rushers. I don't know what it is, but you got to do something on that defense.
So is that run D, is that the front 4, the front 7, or you include some strong safeties in there as well?
It's your front 7.
Okay.
It's your front 7.
All right, moving along, we have the Steelers at number 24.
And these are a big-time faller from last year. The Steelers were a top 10 for me in these rankings, and they've really fallen off that this year, and I'll explain why here. 5th in capital, or excuse me, cap. Now, a lot of people are going to say, wait, I thought they were in cap trouble. Well, they are now, like right as we speak this moment. But next year, when Ben comes off the books and when some other guys come off the books,
Third, right?
Excuse me, third, yes. Yeah, third. I apologize. When Ben and those guys come off the books next year, you're going to get a lot of cap in your franchise. So you will have a lot of room to play with them. Now, your draft capital, not great here at 25th. But what you do have going for you, you're actually pretty young, 10th in youth power index. So I think a lot of people probably think the Steelers is old, but some of that turnover has actually really helped that. Now, let's talk about some of the bad. 31st in adjusted quarterback. Ben is not the answer there, and that's a huge problem. 32nd in offensive line. Last year, they were a top 3 offensive line in Madden. Now they're the worst offensive line in Madden. That's a huge hit that you're going to have to figure out early in your franchise if you want to have any success whatsoever. 27 on offensive athleticism, 25th on weapons. I know people are saying, well, they got Juju, they got Najee Harris, so on and so forth. Now, the reality, guys, is Harris isn't rated that great here in Madden. Some of their other weapons, probably not as high as you'd expect. So, what I've got here is a team that has potential, right? They're young guys that can grow, but they're not good right now. Now, let's talk about the defense, because that's really what you're taking if you're going to take Pittsburgh. You've got the number 1 pass rush unit in Madden. You've got the number 3 run defense in Madden. Only 22nd in coverage, only 21st in defensive athleticism. But that front 7 there is going to do a lot of work for you. So if you really want to try to get after the quarterback, if you want to have the cap to improve over the years, I think the Steelers are a good choice. Now, the thing I like about the Steelers is actually that Ben will be gone after a year. I like getting a young quarterback in Madden, and they're a perfect team to do that with.
Yeah, for sure. They're almost like the anti-Raiders or something, like the opposite Raiders. Moving right along, we have the Cardinals at 23, a team that I wish I could get my hands on. I mean, this team every year is like a low overall, but the players that they have on the roster are just really fun players to use in the game.
And so we're starting like the next tier. Now, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. There's tiers because you see 3 or 4 teams always grouped together that a couple tenths of a point off. You could easily move up a couple spots, a couple far down. So we're in a new tier here with the Cardinals. This is a team I think, again, some people will be a little surprised. They are not higher than they are, but we'll get into why. 19th in cap, 24th in draft capital, 25th in the youth power index. They are an old team. People like to think of Kyler Murray, but you got to realize there's a lot of old people on that team. J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, at least for now. DeAndre Hopkins, A.J. Green. There's a lot of age there that you have to contend with. Now, what you do get is 10th in adjusted quarterback ranking with Kyler Murray. You do get 17th in weapons, but remember, offensive athleticism, 32, not great because you got James Conner playing halfback for you there. I forget the tight end they got out there. He's not super fast anymore like, Arnold was. So things not going so great on offense. Now, defense, you do have the second best pass rushing unit in the game as long as Chandler Jones stays there. If he leaves, you're going to get some troubles, and you probably see them drop maybe 3 or 4 spots if that's the case. Run D 27th, not good. Coverage 15th, defensive athleticism 13th. So Cardinals have some upside to me, but my biggest concern with Cardinals would be the age of that team. It's very easy for that team to age out, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Moving on to the Vikings at 22. Interesting lineup you have here. I see some green, but I see some holes definitely in this team.
Yeah, so they're actually one of those guys. One of those teams where they've only got one really bad spot, and that's our offensive line at 28. After that, it starts getting like there's some issues, but some things we can work with. The other big one's going to be Kirk Cousins, 25th in adjusted quarterback rating. Not the long-term answer there. You do have Kellen Mond on the roster, so maybe you play with Kellen Mond until that Kirk Cousins contract expires for you. 24th in youth power index, so they are an older team. You think of guys like Harrison Smith and some of those other guys, a little bit older. 23rd in cap, so they don't have a ton of money, and 19th in draft capital, so they're middle of the road. But let's talk about what they do have. They're 7th in the weapons rating. You've got Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, right? A lot of good things. Even Irv Smith Jr. At tight end has some upside. 9th in offensive athleticism. We talked about that. On the defensive side of the ball, 17th, Danielle Hunter offers a lot in the pass rush, but not much else there. And then run D 7th, and then a pretty average coverage unit. So there are some bright spots there in Minnesota. The big questions being quarterback, obviously, and then what do you do at offensive line?
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And I know for sure they had some different pushback, and people were surprised at how highly rated Harrison Smith was. Not high on the athleticism, but definitely great with the coverage and run D.
For sure, he's still a great guy in the back end if you want to play like a wide open deep safety.
Yep. And the last on this list, we have the Rams coming in at 21. Interesting to see how this team turns out in the NFL this year with the quarterback change.
And this is one probably where people will be surprised. They were ranked higher last year, and then you're saying, well, wait a second, Jalen Ramsey's 99, Aaron Donald's 99. They got Matthew Stafford. How is this even possible? Well, let's talk about that, because 29th in cap for the second year is going to be a problem. Retaining people, gaining people, the money's not going to be there. 31st in draft capital. They don't have a lot of capital to actually inject into the team in terms of draftable players. So that's going to be a big reason they're getting pulled down in this ranking. Now, the other two issues you see there is Matthew Stafford checks in at 20th in adjusted quarterback ranking. You're going, well, wait, he's an 83 overall. He's a pretty good quarterback. He's up there in age, right? And so we're talking about how well can the quarterback carry for the whole cycle. He's not going to be the answer for the full cycle, but he'll be there for a little while. When I go across here, another one people are going to question, they're going to say 22nd in pass rushing, right? Well, wait, I got Aaron Donald. Well, the reality is, outside of Aaron Donald, this team has no pass rush. There's no pass rush on this team if you don't have Aaron Donald. So you're going to need to get him a running mate. But what this team does have, right, they have weapons. We know that. They're 13th in weapons. They're 13th in offensive athleticism and 14th in O-line. So you've got that going for you. You're 8th in run D and 11th in coverage. So you've got that going for you. Really, the big thing is the team you have right now is basically your team, because you don't have money and you don't have draft picks. So that's really what pulled them down here in these rankings.
Yeah, wow, that is huge. This is somebody who definitely just wants to, that's a good quality player and kind of can just build their team through experience points, and maybe even trade for someone, swing a trade to bring in a pass rusher to go along. Aaron Donald will definitely turn that defense around and be one of the top units in the game. All right, so that's it for the list. Thanks for joining me. Stay tuned. We got the next one coming with the analytics breaking down every single team so you can better help and better choose your Madden 22 franchise squad. Catch you in the next one. If you appreciate our content and all the work we do to bring you guys the latest news, tips, and gameplay from your favorite sports games, drop a like, subscribe to SGO today. You want to take your game to the next level? Then join SGO Insider.